Today, we become legends.
Assault is a very unique game mode thanks to a number of factors, and plays like no other. And with that comes plenty of things that you might not have thought about that aren't strong in Conquest, for example, but are completely broken in Assault. I've been spamming a lot of the mode recently and seen plenty of people not using items or strategies that they really should be, so I thought I'd share some of my accumulated knowledge about the mode in a video to help you guys excel in Smite's most wacky game mode. So first up, we have two specific tank items that are just flat out broken in Assault, but I for some reason rarely see people buying. The two in question being Prophetic Cloak and Gauntlet of Thebes. Even in normal modes, these items are considered pretty damn strong, and arguably essential to supports. However, in Assault, their only weakness is basically nullified, and that is of course their stacking time. Gauntlet of Thebes stacks insanely quickly in Assault, since you're not only always there for every wave, giving you 6 stacks every 30 seconds pretty much guaranteed, but if you can manage to not die in the first couple of fights and your team or you land some kills, the item can literally stack in 2 big team fights plus a couple of minion waves. Once stacked is probably the second most efficient defense item in the entire game, giving 55 of each prots and 200 health. Plus, your teammates get a nice aura of 10 extra prots, and auras are naturally stronger in Assault given they'll be affecting your entire team basically always. Prophetic is a similar story, though it's not quite as universal. You do need a reliable, fairly low cooldown poke ability with good range to utilize this item, but that's more common than you think, and if you meet those requirements, it stacks ridiculously fast given there's always enemies in front of you to hit in Assault. Once stacked, Prophetic gives similar stats to Thebes but slightly better, with 60 of each defenses but only 100 health, but with the added bonus of 10% CDR, and of course we can't forget that mitigation passive, which even if you're not going to meet the 525 protection threshold for 15% mits, this item is still way better than any other tank option once stacked. These two items combined give 115 of each prots, 300 health, 10% cooldown, 7.5 or 15% mitigations depending on your Prophetic, and a 30 protection aura of both kinds to your team. Of course, they are slower to get online compared to something like Sov or Heartward, which immediately gives all the benefits without needing to stack. But given Thebes can stack in literally a few minutes and Prophetic in about 10 minutes, if you're building it on the right gods with a reliable long-range poke, I think these items are heavily overlooked in Assault and should always be built against a mixed damage enemy team. Speaking of Sov and Heartward though, I'd be remiss not to mention the absolute Assault classics here too, as they give vital mana and health regeneration to your team, as well as a small protection aura. On a similar note, grabbing any items that give strong HP 5 and MP 5 is generally a good call. Stuff like Chronos Pendant or Charon's Coin for mages, the aforementioned tank items, anything from the Kusari tree as well gives amazing MP 5. Having a little bit of HP 5 will honestly do more work for you than a bit of lifesteal most of the time due to the nature of Assault, but more on that in a second. Because finally, for broken tank items, Sentinel's Boon is completely and utterly bonkers in Assault and should be the only starter item you build on tanks if you want to win, in my opinion. It comes online at level 15, which is very early, and heals you 24% of your max health and mana every minion wave, aka every 30 seconds. Once this item comes online, and especially if you stacked Prophetic and Thebes early on as well, you basically become immune to poke damage if you play it right, and have infinite mana as well. You can of course die to all-ins or overcommitting to a fight, but the enemy team is going to have a real hard time doing more than a quarter of your health every 30 seconds unless you're playing really far up looking for kills. For some reason, almost no one buys this item when it's completely and utterly busted in this mode. Sure, you might miss out on some damage from your starter like Bluestone or Sundering Axe or something, but it's more than worth it for the sustain this item provides. Plus, if you're the lowest gold on the team, it provides an insane amount of free money as well. In Assault, you won't always be the lowest gold as the tank since you tend to survive longer than the squishies and thus get more farm, but just in case you are lowest gold, you have that effect going for you as well. These three items specifically are so broken that I build them even on squishies sometimes that can sacrifice damage, purely because these three items alone make you so ridiculously hard to kill that just filling your other 3 slots with damage items means you'll still put out respectable damage given you almost never die. I'm not saying do this every game on every god, but there are some gods and team comps where you can get away with this and it works surprisingly well. On a related note, do not neglect percent penetration as a damage dealer in Assault. Tanks are king in this game mode, and unless the enemy team literally has no tanks, you should be building at minimum one major percent pen item, like Charon's Coin for mages, Executioner or Dominance for hunters, etc. And honestly, you should probably be building 2 of these in certain situations, otherwise the tanks will just abuse the ridiculous items I've just mentioned and walk right over you. Next up, let's talk a bit about gods. Of course, you don't get to choose your god in Assault, that's part of the fun. However, However, you do get a reroll, so it's worth talking about what types of gods are strong in Assault and which ones you should just forget about and reroll. In general, assassins are the worst class in Assault due to their lack of ability to poke and not being tanky. There are a few exceptions, for example Thor, who pokes really well with stun double tap, or Camazotz, who has good range on his 1 and 2 for poking, as well as some built-in sustain, but for the most part, if you get stuck on an assassin without great poke, you're probably better going bruiser or even full tank. Which brings me to my next point that I've sort of alluded to already. Tanks are ridiculously strong in Assault, and having a good frontline presence is crucial. Try to avoid rerolling good tanks unless you're specifically short on damage dealers with your composition. Due to the lack of beads in Assault from a lot of people buying Meditation first relic pretty often, a single CC from a tank is often enough to blow up a squishy. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, the tank item pool for Assault is completely nuts, so having a god that can abuse those items is a great way to gain an advantage. I have a full-length Assault god tier list up on my channel already if you're interested in a more in-depth look at what gods truly excel in Assault, since it's extremely different to Conquest or any other game mode for that matter. And finally, I'll quickly mention the reroll system. In an ideal situation, you should be trading bad gods to people who have good gods and a reroll available, so that they can reroll your trash pick into a better one and trade it back to you. This is of course hard to do with randoms, but will definitely improve your experience if you already rerolled and are still stuck on something awful for the mode. Back to items though, this might be a hot take, but I do believe lifesteal is a little overrated in Assault. Sure, it's extremely tempting to get some way to recover health, especially if you don't have a healer. The issue is that there's not really an easy target to recover that health from. The minion wave after the first few minutes dies instantly, and even if it doesn't, it can be hard to get close enough to throw stuff at the wave and actually get any net positive health out of it, since you're very likely to take poke in return and come out of it on the same or even less health than when you pushed up to try and heal. That's not to say lifesteal is completely terrible in Assault, especially on mages with good long range poke that can clear the wave and passively heal them over time, but I do think it's overvalued for the reasons I just mentioned. If anything, some passive HP 5 is actually going to heal you more than lifesteal would. Next up, dying. Due to Assault's fountain mechanics not letting you heal or buy items until death, there are absolutely scenarios where you want to die in Assault. If you've been alive for 20 minutes because you're the healer and you're playing safe, you run the risk of dying at a bad time where your whole team gets wiped and you lose towers or even the whole match. Staggering your respawns is very important, especially in the late game. Sometimes it's actually the better play if you're on low health with no prospects of getting back into fighting condition anytime soon to just suicide and tell your team to back off. They can then hold the 4v5 as long as they can until you're back, rather than waiting for a real fight to erupt and dying alongside 3 or 4 of your other teammates and losing the game. The same goes for spending your gold. You're much better off taking the L and hoping your team can hold that 4v5 so you can come back with 2 or 3 more items than you would have had and actually be useful, rather than being sat there as hell with just a Chronos pendant 25 minutes in. On a similar note, sometimes burning your relics isn't the play in Assault either, even if it would save you. This is more relevant early on, as dying later with a 50-second respawn timer could really hurt your team, but sometimes burning your beads and or Aegis just to survive on 10% health and no mana isn't the play. Unless you have a healer or some way of returning to fighting condition quickly, you're just going to be dead weight for the enemy team to pick off with a poke. May as well bite the bullet and come back with more items and relics still available to make a play. And another quick thing to mention that's not particularly a tip but is worth noting is that Assault minions are worth almost 5 times the amount that Conquest minions are. This is of course because the vast majority of minions in Assault are split between 4 to 5 players. This does mean, however, that getting a single minion wave solo nets you literally hundreds of gold and plenty of XP. This doesn't mean you should go running into the enemy tower as the mage to steal the whole wave and starve your team, but it does mean that if, for example, your whole team got wiped and you're about to die as well, running up and taking the minion wave before you die not only protects your towers while your team waits for respawns, but can give you upwards of 400 to 500 gold, which can be a really big power spike for you. But that's all I've got for some quick Assault tips that can help you out in the mode. This wasn't really meant to be an overarching Assault guide. I haven't really explained any of the simple mechanics that a lot of people probably know about, like the healing pods and which healers are good and stuff like that. It was more so meant to be intermediate to advanced tips for people that already know how the game mode works, but might want to try and improve their gameplay a little bit. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Leave your other tips down below if you've got any more Assault tips that people could make use of, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.